This podcast contains strong language and adult situations and may not be suitable for those who are easily offended. Hey everybody, it's Kay, and this week kind of got away from Jay and I, and we were unable to record an episode with Halloween and parties and all that kind of stuff. We just ran out of time. So instead of leaving you high and dry this week, we're going to share a previously released episode that was available to our Patreon members. A little bit of bonus content. So this features Brendan from the Unchefed podcast and some of the conversations that were cut from the original episode that aired with him. So hopefully you enjoy. Makes me want a hot dog real bad.
Real bad. What do you eat for like when you get those? Do you You're vegan, right?
I am. So there's like a few brands. There's a really good brand called Field Roast that makes a good vegan hot dog. I can't think of off the top of my head what the base is. I'm not sure if it's soy or like a lot of those companies are using like pea proteins now and stuff.
I was gonna say pea protein is hot.
Yeah. So I'm not quite sure what they use, but it's a pretty good hot dog. It's got a little bite to it, like a normal hot dog would.
It's got that snap.
Yeah, a little snap.
Yeah, the snap is what I'm always looking for. I like biting into it and feeling like almost like this weird crunch.
Yeah.
You know, like then the juicy like pop afterwards. That's like a sign of quality.
Yeah, Upton Naturals out of Chicago they also like. I feel like they got the snap the best in the vegan hot dog. They're pretty new to the hot dog game, but they're good.
They came in out the door with the snap.
Yeah, they brought that snap.
That's great. That's great.
But yeah, it's like I love hot dogs.
Yeah, hot dogs are good. I am not vegan. If you're wondering, I don't know if you've probably listened to the podcast before.
I have several times.
You should you should know that like.
Well, you talk about smoking your own bacon.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah, I cure and smoke my own bacon.
That was a thing that I was actually interested in talking with you about at some point. I love the. I love curing. I love smoking. That's originally what got me into cooking to begin with. I imagine at some point you'd want to talk about working, and of course, my background is as a chef. I've been
So
I've been a chef for 20 years. Yeah,
your background as a chef. If we talk about curing and smoking meats, we're talking about your work. So we're good.
That's what got me into the profession originally was this book by I don't know if you've heard of it. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. If you haven't, you should definitely check it out. But it's by Brian Paulson and Michael Roman, and it's just titled Charcuterie. And
I have it.
That's the book that got me into food.
To cure bacon.
It's an amazing book. Absolutely amazing book.
I still use their cure. And I know it off the top of my head. It's 425 milligrams of salt, or no, 425 grams of salt, 200 or 450 grams of salt, 225 grams of sugar.
Right, this is amazing.
And 52 grams of curing salt. Yeah, that's and then I add my own,
like whether you want it sweet or
the cure to that base cure, I will add my own. Do I want to add like flavor to it, like a rib rub or something sweet? I'll add my own rub to that.
Am I going to make an Asian spice with some five spice powder? Do I want to add like some juniper and some pine?
Oh, you guys could get together and come up with some crazy shit.
Dude, I could pull the pork belly I have in my fridge right now because
I got some in mine too.
Tomorrow I'm going to cut part of it off and freeze it. Or actually I probably just smoke it this weekend just to smoke a pork belly. But the rest of it I'm gonna make bacon. I make like probably, what would you say, 10 or I probably make 10 or 20 pounds of bacon a month.
Makes a shit ton of bacon.
And I take it to work and just give it to people at work.
You want to hear a crazy recipe that we came up with at Sambar when I was at Sambar?
I do.
We were doing all these ducks, right? Like we're kind of famous for our rotisserie ducks that we'd serve like as a set with scallion pancakes, rice, watercress, and then this sauce that was basically ginger and shallot cooked down in duck fat forever, and then you would take it out and add a little sherry vinegar, and it was just amazing. You like a little bit of rice, some duck, blah blah blah. Anyways, we got to the point where we had a lot of duck skin left over, because the way that we would do our duck is we would cut the legs off, and then we would take the meat out, turn it into a sausage, and then stuff it into the breast itself, like underneath the skin, and roast it. So it was like sausage and then the meat, and we'd have like the leg skin left over, but we would take that and we would cure it, and then use transglutaminase, which is also known as meat glue, to glue it together, and then cure it like bacon. We did it the exact same way as bacon, but we would press all this duck skin together with like the little bit of duck meat in it, and we would have this little like duck skin bacon.
Oh wow!
At the end of it all, that was, I don't know, that's got to sound like the most revolting thing in the world to a vegan, to be honest. Like I feel kind of self-conscious just like kind of throwing this recipe out in front of you, Kay. But
look who I live with. Like,
but I imagine that you're used to it. You're used to it.
I'm used to it.
So I had to throw it out there that, as revolting as it may sound to some people, I was there. It was so good. It was so like just luscious and flavorful, and like just an umami bomb with like that perfect texture, and I don't know if you like your bacon crispy or a little bit chewier, but I like mine to be like kind of like a crust with like a chew at the end. And that's what it was like.
That's the thing with like when I cure my own bacon and I bring it to people at work, like if I bring them just the bacon after I smoked it, because I only bring it to like 150, 160, where it's like you can eat it like that, but it's kind of like eating raw bacon. Yeah. You should fry it, after that. And I tell people, like, don't try to make this bacon crispy, because unless you slice it really, really thin, it doesn't have the amount of preservatives in it that store-bought bacon has. So it's not going to get crispy like that.
Is that what makes it crispy? Is all the preservatives?
I think so. I think all like I don't know. This guy will know. Brendan will know.
No, that's not what makes it crispy. Sorry.
No, like
the fat, isn't it? Or
the thing that makes it crispy is the fat distribution. Like, and it's like what you're looking at probably is just that you've treated the belly itself with a little bit more care, than you'll get with like a large scale manufacturer that won't have an even fat distribution throughout the slices of bacon that they're using, and they'll usually have industrially fed and raised hogs, and the fat distribution, because they're not like out running around, is really more on the outside. So they just build up like all of this fat. It doesn't distribute equally intramuscularly because they're not exercising. They're not, and they're fed a lot of grain to fatten up really. Yeah. So, but the preservatives themselves.
But I sounded smart when I told them, like, look, the store-bought shit has all this bullshit in it, and that's why it gets crispy.
Well, it is bullshit, but it's like it's a bullshit practice. It's so the TCM that you're talking about, like Michael Roman used it as that's nitrates, that's nitrites. That's the thing that most people have a problem with when it comes to
the curing. Yeah,
salt. The curing. So the TCM number 2, the candy pink looking salt, like that's what your nitrates or nitrites are. Now you can replace that with like celery seed, which has like a natural kind of nitrite. I can't remember which is which, but I think nitrates start out, and then as it develops, it converts to nitrite. But either way, those are the preservatives, and Rollman's recipes have those just as much as the store-bought stuff. You can get around them, but the reason you do that is so that it doesn't spoil under the smoking process, because you're going to be in the danger zone for which is between 40 and 140 degrees for over 4 hours. And like if you're smoking it for that long and that temperature, then you have the opportunity foster microorganisms that could potentially make you sick, and the TCM is designed specifically to get rid of that. And there are ways around that, but they're not necessary. Like, the real problem is with the procedure of industrial raised hogs. It's not the curing. It's not the best thing for your health. Like, I'm not advocating eating bacon 3 times a day. You know,
Look,
but
the last time I made bacon, I brought it to work, and I'll bring some to work to give to people that they can take home and fry up themselves, and then I'll fry a bunch up in the morning, and I'll put it in a Tupperware, and I'll bring it to work and be like, oh, try a piece of the bacon, and they're like, oh man, this bacon's so good, and like midday, I was like,
everyone's asleep.
Fuck this shit. I don't want to give it to these fucking people anymore. I'm just going to eat it myself.
Worthy.
I had like 15 pieces of bacon.
God.
And by the end of the day, I was like dizzy. Like, I'm so fucking dehydrated right now.
Heart's
from all
pounding.
the salt. From all the salt. And I soak, like I after it's done curing, I rinse it off, and then I soak it in water and rinse it off after that to like try to pull some of the salt out. But the shit is so salty.
Well, all bacon's really salty, right? That's kind of why people like bacon. I feel like it's the
probably
saltiness.
the fact that I ate the equivalent of like
Yeah.
a pound and a half. Within like 2 hours. I was just like,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would advocate looking at how the Chinese do things with bacon. They use significantly less salt in their traditional bacon recipes. Like, they keep it a little bit fresher, I would say. But, one of the things that you can do that I've always kind of enjoyed is, I don't know how much sugar you use, but sugar and salt are both desiccants. They have the same pulling property, and they kind of cancel each other out a little bit. So as long as you've got them curing under refrigeration and you cut your salt content, add a little bit of sugar, then you should get the same effect. I would still soak it a little bit afterwards, but as soon as you're done with that, here's a nice little chefy trick for you. Dunk it with a little bit of like high proof alcohol.
Oh, really?
And then let it evaporate. It forms what's called a pellicle. And this is what you do for like your smoked fishes as well. You can do it for smoked tofu. You can do it for smoked tempeh. But it forms a pellicle, which is kind of like this tacky surface because of the evaporation of the alcohol that just grabs smoke and holds onto it. So if you've got really good, like high quality, like, cherry or mesquite or whatever, smoke you're trying to get, that pellicle is going to grab on.
I usually use like either apple or cherry.
The fruit woods are always nice. They're a little bit harder. I think pecan, if you can get like, it's expensive, but if you can get like really good pecan wood, like
okay. So I started on an offset smoker, and now I have a Traeger because I can't.
Everybody loves those Traegers.
Where we live, I can't do an offset smoker unless I like pulled it out into the middle of the driveway and. The neighborhood probably would not be happy with that.
I mean, or they would be.
I was about to say, there's a story of this. I think they're in New Mexico, but it's this Latina chef who is roasting peppers, and she does a lot of these same like smoking techniques where she's roasting peppers, and it's actually this thing that really makes the neighborhood happy. So, I mean, you start looking at this as I'm never going to give up meat at all, but I think moving into a vegetable centric, so we can bring Kay into this. You can do the same thing with like a lot of peppers, a lot of more cruciferous vegetables. Like learning how to smoke vegetables and roast them and treat them with the same kind of consideration that you do meat actually has opened up my cooking and how I view food in a lot of really interesting ways. Like now, when I use meat. There's definitely the time where I've got a big duck sitting downstairs in my refrigerator right now that I'm super excited about. I got the scallion pancakes already. I've been missing that. Like, I love like roasted duck, like the Peking style with like the crispy skin. That's one of my favorite things to eat. So don't get me wrong. I love good celebratory meat, but treating it as a condiment more often than not has made me feel healthier. It's made me feel it's cheaper. It's cheaper on the pocketbook, you know. Trying to celebrate vegetables as the star of the table. Not all the time, because I was growing up like you're successful, you're a man, you're rich. If you like, you know, that's if you eat meat, you know, you got to eat meat. But as I slowly start saying, you know, like 1 or 2 nights out of the week, I can celebrate vegetables and have that be like the central part of my table. All of a sudden I started realizing that's actually kind of easy. I can make some really cool stuff that way. And it went from 2 to 4, and now we're at like 5 days a week. Vegetables are the central thing. And then the one time that we have meat is like this kind of, I think it was, it's like the celebration. There's this food writer named MFK Fisher, who is absolutely amazing. She had this book called How to Cook a Wolf. And this book, How to Cook a Wolf, was all about when you're poor, what you tend to do is tighten your belt, right? But the reality is that your belt should always be tight, and that you should, when you're poor, you should focus on that one day that you get to splurge. Like, that's the day that's going to keep you going. So like the focus shouldn't be on tightening your belt. The focus should be on the celebration. And you see that with a lot of cultures that aren't quite as well off, where they have like more holidays, and these holidays are geared towards specific practices. Like Christmas for you know, a lot of Mexican families is when you fold your tamales, and that becomes like a big part of what brings them together. You know, and I think that's cool. The whole How to Cook a Wolf thing, like, and you can do that with meat and say like, I'm going to pick that one day where it's going to be just fucking balling. We're going to go hog, like, literally on this.
I think it's interesting too, though, because like you were a chef. You're no longer a chef, correct?
Fuck
I mean,
no,
you're always a chef, but like not as a profession, right?
That's right.
But like for me, going to restaurants, and it's like, oh, our option for you to eat is this wedge salad. Or
oh my God, don't you hate that?
Oh, it's horrible. Or you go to these places where chefs, yes, like their normal menu is very meat centric, but they take joy in figuring out how to be creative and how to make these vegetables interesting and exciting for someone who's not eating the meat. And that's like, I love finding those places where it's just like, you did something like so cool with this vegetable. I'm not eating like a chunk of iceberg and a shitty tomato.
There was this chef. I can't remember his name, but I did work for his chef de cuisine. This was several years ago. She's not his chef de cuisine anymore, but this restaurant called Narcissa, where they did this carrot Wellington dish, which was like this fire roasted carrot. Like, it was cured, fire roasted, and then they took duxelle, which is like basically finely chopped mushrooms cooked, and then with like reduced cream, and then sort of turned into this paste, and then put it around the carrot, and then wrapped it in puff dough, and then baked it. And this was based off like the beef Wellington idea, where you have like the steak in the middle with the mushroom and the pat. But they took this around and put it on his ear and turned it into a dish that obviously not vegan. There was cream, but it was a celebration of a vegetable. And I've had it, and it was good. It was really good. We'll say it was really good.
Like, I've taken him to some restaurants. Like, we're getting better where we live now. It's been pretty bleak for a while, but when I lived in LA, there were just amazing restaurants there that, you know, just did great vegan food. And I've taken him to a couple of those, and even he was just like, damn, this is really good.
I definitely won't turn my nose up at like vegan food. You know, it would be stupid to, you know, it's food. If it tastes good, I don't care. Like,
food is food.
Yeah. Food is food. Especially like, you know, you have people who are like, I hear about people who are so picky with food. and they're like, no, I don't eat that because it's green.
It's not a nugget.
And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, the color of the food makes you not want to eat it. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You know, like,
oh man,
me growing up, like, you ate what was put in front of you, and if you didn't, you ate it the next morning for breakfast.
Yeah, it's not going to be better tomorrow.
It's not going to be any better. And if you didn't eat it then, you either got your ass whooped or you ate it for lunch.
There's that comedian. Yeah. There's a comedian that does a thing like where he's arguing with his kid about like, here's your dinner, and he doesn't want to eat it. Yeah. And he's like, I don't care when you eat this, but this will be your next meal.
This will be your next meal. Like, I'll put it in the fucking freezer and then bring it out and put it in the microwave. Like, you're gonna eat this, you know? And it's like, and it's so funny because like when we're at work, I talk to people and, you know, I sit around a bunch of girls at work and they're like, oh, my boyfriend doesn't eat this. And I'm like, what? Like, what? And they're like, oh, well, he doesn't like these kinds of foods. And I'm like, all right, well, this might sound a little misogynistic, but I could understand a girl saying that. But a dude, like, you just fucking eat it. Just eat it. Like, you're a man. Fucking eat it.
I found like guys are as somebody who's been in the restaurant as a chef, like guys have a tendency, and it's you mentioned the misogyny, like it can come back to misogyny. Like guys have a little bit more entitlement when they go out, when they like put their money on the table. They're like, no, only the thing that I like, and that kind of turns into this way of interacting a little bit. Whereas I think women tend to be a little bit more used to kind of acquiescing, like, you know, they're a little bit more used to ceding ground, I think, than men have a tendency to be.
Picking our battles.
Picking your battles, exactly. I think that's like men are like, there's no consequence to me being angry about something. You know?
Yeah,
and you guys don't get called Karens if you get upset about something.
That's right.
You get called Kevin, so.
Not as
or
much.
Chads.
No, not as much.
Chads,
no.
You Chad.
And
I've had people tell me they were allergic to the color green, and I'm like, you can just tell me you don't want spinach, man. Like, you're not allergic to green. Like, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
I just from where I come from, it's very hard to listen to someone say, I don't eat that, and then hear their bullshit reason for not eating it. And then if like you'll hear people, oh, I don't eat that. And it's like, oh, well, have you ever tried it?
No.
It's like, okay, well,
I hate tofu.
You can fuck all the way off now because you're just a piece of shit.
All right, to respond to both this, first off, Kay, tofu is awesome. Anybody that says fuck tofu just hasn't had the right one, because tofu is fucking great.
Yeah. Oh, second off, I mean, it's so funny because we work in a place where we're surrounded by people in cubicles.
Not even cubicles. There's no walls separating us between people.
Yeah. People would come to work and they'd be sick before COVID. They'd be sick and like at their desk, like raspy, chunky fucking cough,
sneezing,
and it would annoy you. You'd be like, oh, you motherfucker, like, go home, you look like shit, you sound like shit. And they'd be like, oh, I don't want to use my vacation time because I want to go on vacation to see my family for Christmas. And then it would just work its way around. And now like during COVID, someone coughs and everybody's like,
all the heads turn and
it's like that scene from Inception where everybody's aware.
Like, like somebody coughs and everyone's like, hey,
get out.
You get 2 more of those and then you got to go.
I'm gonna be right back.
There's an Asian comedian. He was like, it sucks that the world's in a pandemic, but this is like more towards the start. He was like, it sucks that the world's in a pandemic, but on the plus side, as an Asian American, I've never felt more powerful on an airplane.
I get the whole
that's
row.
An awesome joke. That's a really good joke.
Oh man. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Quick, let's talk about bacon some more. Seriously, that charcuterie book like kickstarted my career. It's not there's no exaggeration in my voice whatsoever. That is the book that started me out.
Oh,
And
yeah.
to this day, the corned beef recipe is something that I make whenever I don't know, it's almost like a comfort thing, I think, at this point.
Yeah. The pastrami recipe. For like the pickling spice and everything. I made that, and I used a brisket the first time, but I found that like you can use tri-tips are good. Tri-tips are good for because brisket out here in California, like we went to Costco and like a 4-pound, just the flat of the brisket was like $75. And I was just like, what the fuck? Like brisket used to be like, you get a 13-pound brisket. It's cheap. That's what people cook for Christmas, and now so many people want to do brisket and it's not fucking cheap anymore. Now you have to go to different cuts of meat, and it's like, so like tri-tips or like the rib roast, which the rib roast can be kind of expensive, like the ribeye roast. They can be kind of expensive because that's the steaks that people want, you know. But like my old roommates that I used to live with, we would go and we'd be like, "Hey, let's get sake," and we'd go get sake, and we'd go to Bevmo, get it, but we'd each get our own bottle of sake, and we would never pour because this one wanted like a pear flavor sake and this one wanted like this.
Oh,
and we would just crack the bottle and we'd sit on. I know. It makes me sound like a insane alcoholic. And we were when we lived together. But there would be 3 bottles of sake, and we would like,
oh my God.
You want to try my sake? We would pass the bottles between each other and just drink. There was no, pour for this guy, pour for this guy. We would just get fucked up on sake.
So you were just going for the end result and not like the ritual of sake.
Yeah, I guess.
Which you don't have to. I mean, what you're talking about, the whole like pouring for other people, that usually is like when you invite people to your house. Like Japan has a better drinking culture than we do. Like we kind of drink in private. Like I think there's a lot of stigma behind drinking in this country. Like I think that a lot of people like through the pandemic are like, actually, I like to drink a lot and I'm doing pretty well for myself. So fuck you. I'm meeting a lot of people that have, right. Like same, like I've been a heavy drinker for quite a while. I've done quite well for myself in life and I have no stigma behind it. And I think that the idea of it being like out in the open, like in other cultures, like it kind of changes the way that you drink it in these interesting ways. And Japan's one of those examples. Like you have people over to your house, they're huge on hospitality. It's also the case when you invite your boss out. Like there's a lot of corporate culture, like where you invite your coworkers out and then you take care of them. And then this like gives you a positive perception in the eyes of your coworkers. But what you were saying earlier about doing the sake bottles and sharing them reminded me, I got invited to this Argentinian asado. Like it was a bunch of friends of mine from Argentina. I was the only white guy there. I was the only guy who didn't speak Spanish fluently. I speak like very, very, very broken, like kitchen Spanish. So it was difficult for me to communicate. But the way that they did their party, they do this asado every Friday, every single Friday. Like 20 guys get together. They've got this home built horno or oven and this grill, and they bring all their meat and they've got a special kind of salt, and it's a huge part of their culture to get together and do this barbecuing. And while they're barbecuing, they get a bottle of Fernet, they get like a mug, and then like some Coke, and this bottle of Fernet is used to fill the cup, and they make a like little cocktail out of it with the Coca-Cola. And this mug is shared between everybody. And the only rule is when somebody asks you for it, you've got to give it to them. And when it's empty and you notice it, you got to fill it if you're next to the bottle. So it stays full. You never fill it yourself, and it keeps getting passed. And you have it until somebody asks for it. And then somebody asks for it and you give it to them. And then you have to sit without it for a while. And then when you want it again, you go up and you ask them and they have to give it to you. And that's like the whole thing. Like nobody's drinking on their own. Like it's just this completely communal drinking process.
It like kind of forces you to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Social.
Social. Yeah.
I want to say diligent for some reason, but that's not the right word.
Well, for an alcoholic,
like,
it's diligent.
It makes it more of like a community event instead of just drinking.
You're
what
more
did you say it
aware
was
of
called?
everybody else. Like you're aware of who's holding. It's almost like Lord of the Flies with like the conch. Like the person who has the booze is usually the one who's like communicating too, because everybody's paying attention to them.
Yeah.
You know, and then when you ask for it, it's like, and then all of a sudden, like becoming the center of attention, like we've been talking loosely, we've been grazing the subject of imposter syndrome, but it's something that goes out the window because you actually have something that you want when you become the center of attention. You have like a very real reward when you're the center of attention. And it's something that's understood. It has like a value that everybody's on the same page. Yeah.
Give me the liquor.
Give me the fucking alcohol.
Right? Like it's just so many interesting
I am
ways.
the center.
I am.
Give it to me.
I don't know. Drinking culture. There's so many interesting ways to drink. It's, you know, like, it's fascinating.
My brother and sister-in-law live in Italy. They live in Bologna. You okay?
No, I'm doing that because I remember going there.
And just, you know, here, like you said, there's kind of a stigma around it, but there it's like, you're just, well, first of all, they walk everywhere. You know, we're going to walk here, we're going to walk there. And at 10 a.m. in the morning, we're just walking. All right, it's wine time. Let's go into this little, what do they call them? It's not a bar. It's, shit.
In Italy?
Yeah.
Yeah. A cafe.
Not a cafe. Fuck, I don't know. But you go into a place that serves, you know, alcohol. And it's like wine time. Here's some Prosecco. You just have a glass and then you move on and you walk some more. And then you go to the next place and you have another glass of Prosecco. And it's just part of life. And it's just natural. And there's no like, I'm having a glass of Prosecco at 10 a.m. It's wonderful.
The cops are showing up. You got to hide it in a paper bag.
Because you know at 12, everything's closed.
And you just take a nap.
Everything's closed and everyone naps. And then it opens back up at 3 and everyone walks around and gets like a piece of pizza and some more, another spritzer.
Oh,
and then at 5, everything closes. And then at 7, it opens back like
siesta, baby.
Yeah. But I mean,
love that.
If anyone knows how to just enjoy a meal and life in general,
definitely
freaking Italians.
Oh yeah. That was like, I've been to Israel a couple times and I've had a lot of fun in Israel.
That's some of my favorite cuisine is coming out of Israel.
The best food I've ever eaten was in Israel.
Oh yeah, as a vegetable
Their food is
fan,
so good.
Yeah.
But going to Italy, like that was the most relaxed, calming, good time that we had.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, like going,
because it was like, what are you doing? I don't know, around 10, I'm probably gonna like get up and do some shit. Until then, who gives a fuck?
Yeah. So like bringing it back to work a little bit. So, you know, my brother, obviously he's American. He grew up in America and now he's been living in Italy for over 10 years. And just the thoughts around work between America and Italy here, it's like the first thing you ask somebody when you go to a party and you're meeting, what do you do for a living? Like it's all about your work and what do you do to survive and how do you make your living? Whereas there, it's like they actively try to not have to work.
It's like talking about like politics or religion.
Yeah, like they want to enjoy life and work is just kind of like they do it obviously, but it's not what is the main focus of their life. And it's such an amazing viewpoint in
Yeah.
life, and it's just like, oh man, can I come
like
live
that.
here too?
I would love to move there, but I want to move there when I'm old and I can be like, just like the old man who, when you walk down the street and someone's working, there's always an old man standing behind them.
just watching what they're doing,
Like
like people
watching
working
what
on
they're doing.
like construction workers
Yeah,
on the street.
like an old man who used to be an electrician and is not an electrician anymore, and he stands behind an electrician and is just watching what they're doing. You know, like, is this?
I feel like
motherfucker
that's the
doing
exact
right?
opposite of like you're taking your work into your retirement though.
Right.
Whereas like the
What
whole
am
thing
I
was like you don't think
doing?
about work at
Yeah,
all. Now
but-
you're like bringing it into your retirement.
Yeah, but
Now you're bored and you want to see
Yeah,
what everyone else is
but
doing.
I think when you're over there and you're older and you're retired from, like, you just know, like, if you're retired
like
from
you wake up
this-
one day and you're like, I'm
from
done.
this profession,
Yeah.
yeah, when you're retired from this profession, you get to go tell people, no,
You're
that's
doing
not
it
right.
But I feel like they don't even do that. They just
No,
watch.
they just watch.
They're just observing because life is interesting over there. Like everything is just chill
Oh
and
yeah,
interesting.
I get it. You're not like I thought that you were saying it in the sense that you're like, what are you doing? Why are you doing it that way? As
No,
opposed
no,
to
no.
just I know what you're doing and it's interesting to me because
Yeah.
it's something
Yeah.
I understand.
Just observing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. I got you.
God,
I got
Have
you.
you ever been to Italy?
I haven't. I've got
You should
friends that live
go.
in Florence, but I've
You
never
should go.
been. I've been invited a couple of times. I just can never find the time.
I love that
Oh,
place.
it's amazing.
I was invited like pre-pandemic. Italy's obviously had a rough go of it.
Yeah, they were pretty bad for
Pandemic
a while.
wise. Yeah. And pre-pandemic I was working 60, 70 hours a week.
Oh,
so
God.
now I'm in a position where like I could actually do it.
That charcuterie book it's good. It's
Mhm.
I love it.
To this day it's still like top 5 cookbooks, I think, for me, most used cookbooks. If not top 5, definitely top 10. Yeah, I would feel comfortable putting it in the top 10 for sure. And Michael Roman, just period, is just really like all of his writing. He does this book called Ratio, where he talks about just common food knowledge, which I think is a good way of looking at food in general. Is a lot of people, they think that being a chef is like having all the recipes and, you know, kind of getting to that whole like it's weird that a chef wouldn't understand, you know, drums or flats right off the bat, right? But that's never how I've looked at food, you know, like I don't look at it from a recipe from like an endpoint perspective. I look at it the same way that a good farmer looks at farming. Like they don't farm their individual, like, what are you growing this week? And they're like, whatever I can in the soil. Like
Yeah.
I take care of the soil and then whatever comes out of the soil is what I'm doing. And that's how I've always kind of, and I think it's what's made me successful in the food world is like, that's how I look at constructing menus. That's how I look at cooking in general, is not from this endpoint perspective, like what recipe am I doing? Like I'm going to do whatever it takes to have hot wings on my menu. It's more like, okay, well, what in the area are people doing well?
Where like I make like shrimp etouffee and
Man, says
pasta
the guy who
lia.
doesn't like
and-
gumbo.
Right. He'll make
Okay,
gumbo for
You're
the
gonna have to
like-
address that at some point.
I
with
like
Cajun food.
gumbo. I like gumbo.
You don't
I
like
just
making it?
don't like to make it.
That's fair.
Fuck that shit.
I thought you were saying you didn't like it, period. And I was like, how does anybody not like gumbo? It's
No, I
good.
like
It's
gumbo.
good.
I like gumbo.
I feel like it's been a lot of just like, I don't know. It's just
Meat
been,
talk.
it's just been fun.
Meat talk.
Yeah. There's been
Yeah,
a lot of meat talk that might
Yeah,
be
she's like,
exclusive
it's been a lot of
Patreon.
fun.
I love hearing about bacon.
Yeah.
Well, next time we'll have to crowd him out with vegan conversation. Have you
Yeah.
ever done like aquafaba? Do you know how to do like the whipped?
I know what it is. I've never actually tried it myself. I'm very curious to try it to see what happens. But I haven't.
We'll have some conversations about veganism and
Yeah.
what it means to be
Are we done?
vegan, and I'm looking forward to that. Like, I'm kind of hoping you come out the door with like, and another thing about potato chips. Like that's like
milk powder and potato chips.
That's the perfect energy.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you for listening to the Fuck My Work Life podcast. If you enjoy the show, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. You can support the show by telling your friends or joining our Patreon. We also have some sweet Fuck My Work Life merch available over at Teespring. All links can be found in the show notes. Send your workplace stories to fmwlpod@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 310-818-3273. Be sure to follow us on all the socials at FMWLPod. And remember to support indie podcasts. They work hard to bring you a variety of amazing content. Until next week, bye fuckers.